Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is a personal one. It's the reason I don't like working late anymore, and the reason I get a real sick feeling in my stomach whenever I see one of those big, windowless buildings on the side of the highway. It happened a few years ago, back when I was in my early 20s, just trying to make some money to get through college. My cousin Cody and I had been on a bunch of camping trips around Colorado. We were young, you know. I was 22, he was 23. This one trip was to the Uncompahgre National Forest. It was my first time there. But Cody, he knew the area. We always went camping in the middle of the week. Our jobs gave us weird days off, which was perfect for avoiding the weekend crowds. I always let Cody be the leader on these trips. He was an Eagle Scout, and I was not. I was just there to enjoy the outdoors and his cooking. We parked the car near a little picnic area and hiked into the woods. After about 15 minutes, we found a great spot. It was a clearing, big enough for our 2 tents, a small stove, and a campfire. The first thing we did, like always, was set up the tents. Cody could have us up in just a few minutes, like it was nothing. It always took me forever, probably close to 20 minutes of fumbling with poles and stakes. I say it took me that long because honestly, I haven't been camping in the real wilderness since this night. Once the tents were up, we built a fire pit out of rocks and gathered up some wood. Cody had a fire starter, so we kind of cheated, but who cares? The sun was starting to go down, casting those long, orange shadows through the trees. We got the fire going, and soon Cody was cooking up steaks and burgers on his portable grill. That's one thing about Cody, he never messed around with food on these trips. He was a great cook, so I just let him handle it. We had our bear spray close by, just in case the smell attracted anything, but Cody always said it was unlikely. He used to say, "The real thing you got to worry about in the middle of the woods is other people." I never really understood what he meant until that night. So there we were, eating steak and burgers, drinking a few beers, and listening to some classic rock on a little Bluetooth speaker. If you've never been in that situation, it's hard to describe how perfect it feels. Just you, a good friend, good food, and the sounds of the forest. As it got darker, we pulled out a deck of cards and started playing on this little folding table we brought. We played some normal games, and then we switched to Uno, and that's when we heard it. I paused the music on my phone. The speaker went silent, and the only sound was the crackling of our fire. But then it was clear. It was the sound of someone humming. A low, tuneless hum and the soft crunch of footsteps on leaves and twigs coming from just beyond the circle of light from our fire. It was somewhere out there in the pitch-black darkness between the trees. Cody looked at me, his eyes wide. "Find the flashlight," he whispered. I scrambled through my bag, my fingers fumbling. By the time I found it and clicked it on, the humming and the footsteps had stopped. There was nothing there but a wall of dark trees. I asked Cody if we should be worried. He said it was definitely weird. We were deep in the woods. It wasn't a common trail. For someone to be walking by so close to our camp, humming loudly like that, it was just wrong. I was shaken up, and I could tell Cody was too, even though he tried not to show it. We went back to our game of Uno, but we kept the music off this time. We were both listening, trying to hear anything over the sound of the fire. We were so focused on listening that we weren't ready for what happened next. Out of nowhere, a big heavy stick landed right in the middle of our campsite with a loud thud. It made both of us jump out of our skin. It didn't just fall from a tree. You could tell by the angle and the sound. This thing was thrown. It was thrown at us. Cody shot to his feet. He started yelling into the darkness, something like, "Whoever's out there messing with us, get a life and screw off." He was trying to sound tough, but I could hear the shake in his voice. After he yelled, we heard footsteps again, but this time they were moving away from us, fast. I looked at him, my heart hammering in my chest. "We should pack up," I said. "Let's just go somewhere else." "Absolutely not," he said, shaking his head. "We're not packing up in the dark. That's how you get lost or hurt." He told me to just keep my bear spray next to me in my tent when we went to sleep. It was the only thing we had for self-defense, really. For the next hour, we just sat there by the fire, not talking, just listening. Every few minutes, we'd hear a sound from the woods. a branch cracking, a rustle in the leaves. They were sounds that you just knew weren't being made by an animal. It felt like someone was out there, maybe more than one person, just watching us. Waiting. We couldn't stay up all night. Eventually, we knew we'd have to try to sleep. We made a plan. We would take turns staying up to keep watch, just to make sure no one came into our camp to steal our stuff, or worse. Cody said he would take the first watch. He said he'd sit by the fire and read his book. So I crawled into my tent, zipped it up tight, and got into my sleeping bag. Even though I was terrified, I was also exhausted, and I fell asleep. Waking up in the middle of the night when you're camping is normal. It gets cold, the ground is hard, your sleeping bag is never as comfortable as your bed. A million little things can wake you up. When I first opened my eyes, I didn't know what had woken me. I was still in that fuzzy, half-asleep state where your brain hasn't quite caught up yet. I was lying on my back, and I looked up toward the mesh screen at the top of my tent door, and I saw a head. It was a silhouette peering down into my tent. At first, my foggy brain thought it was Cody. The shape looked about right. It was too dark to see any of his face, just the outline against the faint starlight. "Cody?" I mumbled. I thought he was waking me up for my turn to be on watch. My voice was groggy. Is it my turn?" I stared at the head, waiting for an answer. It just stayed there, perfectly still, looking down at me in my sleeping bag. As the seconds ticked by, I started to feel more and more awake. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. Then I heard the sound of the zipper on my tent being quietly zipped back up. The head disappeared. I laid back down for a second, confused. But then it was like a switch flipped in my brain. I had a sudden, terrifying moment of clarity. I shot up into a sitting position and listened. I could hear footsteps, soft and careful, walking away from my tent. "Cody?" I said again, this time louder. He didn't answer. My hands were shaking as I unzipped my tent and peeked outside. The campfire was nothing but glowing embers now. The clearing was empty. Cody wasn't out there by the fire. I looked over at his tent. It was zipped up. I scrambled out of my tent and went over to his. I unzipped the flap and looked inside. There was Cody, fast asleep in his sleeping bag. I've never felt a fear like that. It was like ice water being poured over my entire body. I got goosebumps, chills, whatever you want to call it. I think I almost got sick right there. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. That wasn't Cody looking into my tent. Someone else had been standing right over me while I slept. I started shaking him, trying to wake him up. When he finally opened his eyes, all confused, I whispered as loud as I could, "Someone's here. Someone's at the campsite." It took him a minute to understand what was happening, to come back to reality just like I had. But when he did, he grabbed his can of bear spray. He looked guilty. He said he must have dozed off while he was reading his book. He told me I should sleep in his tent with him for the rest of the night. But to do that, I needed my sleeping bag from my tent. He came out of his tent with me, holding his bear spray, and stood watch while I ran the few feet to my tent to grab my stuff. I was in my tent, my hands grabbing my sleeping bag, when I heard it again. That goddamn humming. It was coming from the trees, just outside the clearing. It was the same low, tuneless sound from before. I grabbed my sleeping bag and scrambled out of the tent. Cody whispered at me to hurry up. "You hear that too?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes," he said. We both got back inside his tent and zipped it up tight, holding our cans of bear spray like they were actual weapons. I'm telling you, in that moment, I was hoping a bear would show up. I would have felt safer with a bear than with whatever was out there. The next few hours were the longest of my life. I stayed awake while Cody tried to sleep. Every little sound from the forest made me jump. After what felt like forever, I woke him up and we switched. When Cody woke me up for the last time, the sky was just starting to get light. It was almost dawn. We didn't even talk about it. We just started packing everything up as fast as we could. By the time we were done, there was enough light to see the trail clearly. We hiked back to the car without looking back. We could have driven to another campsite, tried to have another night somewhere else, but neither of us wanted to. The feeling from that night was too strong. It was a haunting experience, and I think we both just wanted to be home inside with locked doors. It's been 6 years since that happened. Cody has asked me a few times if I want to go camping again, but I always make up an excuse. I haven't had any interest. People are just too scary. I still think about it all the time. Who was that person? Why were they out there in the middle of nowhere, stalking our campsite? And that image, the image of that person's head, a dark shape in the dark, just looking down into my tent while I was sleeping. It feels like something straight out of a nightmare. I don't know if I'll ever go camping in the deep woods again, and I definitely don't know if I'll ever forget what it felt like to realize I wasn't alone out there.